Welcome students to lesson 14 of the Urban World topic. In this lesson we're going to be exploring one of the most important ideas in the understanding of cities, which is that they change. The populations change, the types of people change, the amount of money in the city changes, the way the city looks changes. This is called urban change. I want you to understand why this has happened in Bristol, how it has happened, and in future lessons what effects this has had on the city and its people. Please write the date, title and learning objective and have a pen and paper ready to learn. Time to review prior learning. Please write 1 to 10, answer the questions from memory and then mark your answers. Game time. Number 1. Bristol is in southwest England, in the county of Bristol. So Bristol is also a county as well as a city. 2. Bristol grew due to its important secondary sector and its role in world trade. 3. After colonialism by the British Empire, many people in former colonies migrated to Bristol. 4. Bristol's importance today is largely due to the tax revenues the government earned from its economy, used for investment in the city. Today, Bristol's famous university has attracted many high-skilled students and businesses to the city. 6. Bristol also has a valuable tourism sector due to landmarks such as the Clifton Suspension Bridge and events like the hot air balloon fiesta. 7. The unemployment rate in Rio's favelas is often higher than 20%, leading to poverty and high crime. 8. Petrobras is a major energy company in Rio, providing jobs in the formal economy. 9. What NGO helped people start businesses in rural Nigeria by selling mosquito nets to the people to prevent malaria? It was Nets for Life. 10. Aid in Nigeria is usually most effective when it empowers people. So it's not just money, but it's training and it's skills in how to start businesses. Give yourselves a mark out of 10. If you got 8 or above, awesome work. You've really learned these ideas. If you missed any questions, answer them again from memory in a week's time. To introduce this important idea of urban change, I'm going to show you some photos. Please look at them and answer the questions from your understanding. Number 1. What do you think the main ethnic group in the UK was around 1900? So if you're not sure about an ethnic group, it's the appearance of people and where they come from. So the main ethnic group in the UK around 1900 was white Anglo-Saxon. That's how we describe it. Anglo-Saxons, they were the tribes from Germany and from Scandinavia, so countries like Norway and Denmark, that migrated many hundreds of years ago to the United Kingdom and populated it. 2. How might the UK's relationships with the world have changed the UK's population? Well, you should have said that Bristol's empire meant that it had close relationships with people of different ethnic backgrounds in countries around the world, such as India, Pakistan, African countries such as Kenya and Nigeria, as well as the Americas such as Canada and the West Indies. Incorrectly called the West Indies, but now known as the Caribbean. You may have said that these people would have migrated after the end of the British Empire, consequently changing the ethnic background of Britain's population. 3. Why did manufacturing decline in the UK? You should have said that it was caused by deindustrialization as a result of globalization, the spread of competition between countries around the world due to free trade and easier trade because of better transport. You may also have said that a government policy called privatization played a role, if you remembered the UK economy lesson on this topic. 4. What might the UK's government have invested in that would increase the quaternary sector? So you need to know that the quaternary sector is the research sector and IT research sector, so it involves making new things, new medicines, new technologies. To do that, you need highly skilled people who have attained university degrees, usually in specialized subjects such as engineering. So the government would need to invest in universities for that to happen, and also in things like science parks and communications infrastructure such as the internet. Okay, urban change. What is it? And how has it happened in Bristol? Let's go. The first part of Bristol that's changed is its economy. The jobs that people have in the city have changed. Let me show you. This is the economic employment structure of the United Kingdom in 1900, and it's very similar to the economic structure of Bristol in 1900. As you can see, the manufacturing sector, secondary, is by far the largest, occupying more than 50% of all jobs. The primary sector, over 15%, is probably larger than what would have been in Bristol at that time, but it would still have been significant, and the tertiary sector is much smaller. For example, tourism, retail, and business jobs, far fewer people would be employed in this as they often required more skills. Education was much lower back then. Over time, this employment structure changed. In the 1900s, early 19th century and early 20th century, international trade dominated Bristol's economy. The harbourside port was the main dock in the centre of Bristol on the River Avon, where goods were loaded and unloaded from around the world. Products such as steel and cotton and completed ships, as well as other goods such as clothes, were loaded and unloaded from ships in this dock in the centre of the city. Additionally, manufacturing was the second important feature of Bristol's economy. Part of the British Empire was dependent on the manufacturing and processing of raw materials. One very popular commodity that was being processed in the UK around the 19th and early 20th century was tobacco to make cigarettes and cigars. One of Britain's largest tobacco factories was located in the centre of Bristol, called the Tobacco Factory, and this employed many hundreds of people back then. And these are two examples of industries that were important in the UK's economy and in Bristol's economy at the beginning of the 20th century. But that has changed. Due to deindustrialization, manufacturing has declined significantly. Britain's role in world trade has declined, especially the scale of its exports relative to the scale of other countries' exports. Britain's manufacturing companies have largely declined or been bought by companies around the world, and consequently Britain exports fewer manufactured goods than it did in the past compared to other countries. And so, Bristol's factories closed down. This is reflected in the shrinking secondary sector. In response to this, the tertiary sector and the quaternary sectors grew rapidly. The wealth created by Bristol's secondary sector and its international trade was used to develop its education system, Bristol University and the University of West of England, and its service economy. A great number of people in Bristol in 2019 work in hospitality, so things such as taxi drivers, hotels, tourist industry, and retail, such as working in shops and department stores. All of these jobs occupy more than 3/4 of Bristol's economy. Let me show you a couple of examples of how this has shown up in Bristol. Government investment in education has led the population structure to have very different skills. People are no longer as skilled in manufacturing or in coal mining in Bristol, but rather they are more skilled in providing services to people. Additionally, the infrastructure has been dramatically improved by the government investment brought about by the wealth from Bristol's economy in the past. For instance, Bristol's harbourside, its main port located in the centre of the city, has been transformed into a tourist hub. It's no longer a dock used for ships. This is the old dock you see in the background that's completely closed down. It no longer has its old role. The port warehouses have been converted into apartments. The main dock warehouses here have been converted into a shopping centre and restaurants. And across the river here is the Harbourside Festival, a music festival that happens annually in Bristol. Every summer, thousands of people flock to Harbourside for tourism, for hanging out on the riverside, for drinking and socializing and having fun. Young people flock to the centre of the city, to the harbour side, to shop and to eat and to socialise, but definitely not to work in the port. And this is one example of how Bristol's economy has changed to the tertiary sector. Additionally, Bristol's tobacco factory has closed down, but the building remains and it's been completely transformed. It's now an important theatre in Bristol, which is an indication of Bristol's increasing role as a creative city, where people are using their skills in the arts, in music and in theatre and in film to attract people and create jobs. Not only that, but other factories have been converted into research and technology centres for developing new technologies for aeroplanes, such as the large factory for Airbus, one of the largest manufacturers of airplanes in the world, in the north of Bristol. So, docks have closed and been replaced by centres of tourism and apartment buildings for rich young people, and factories have closed and been replaced by other jobs. This is the economic change that's happened in Bristol, but it's not the only way the city has changed. Bristol's very people have changed as well. And we call this population change. In 1900, Bristol's population would have looked like this. This is called Victorian England because of Queen Victoria being alive at the time. Almost all the people were white Anglo-Saxon. There were very few migrants in the city of different ethnic backgrounds, so more than 95% of the population would have been white English. However, due to economic growth brought about by the success of Bristol's port and its manufacturing companies, this success led to the attraction of people from around the UK and around the world. Additionally, that increased wealth led to investment in infrastructure and in better services which attracted people around the world. It caused migration. But that wasn't the only reason. The UK's relationships with the world, both in the past and today, have meant that migration has been particularly rapid in Bristol. This map shows the Commonwealth of Nations. These are former colonies of the United Kingdom. Most of these countries are English-speaking, meaning that it is very easy for migrants who move to Bristol and to the UK to be able to set up in their new life. The main language in Nigeria is English, in South Africa, in Australia, in Canada, in India, in Pakistan even. And so consequently, migration from these countries to the UK is particularly high, and many of these people migrate to Bristol because they have relatives who live there already. Additionally, Bristol is famous in these countries because of its important role in world trade in the past. It's not only the Commonwealth, though. Britain's role in the European Union has meant that Bristol has been increasingly populated by people from European countries, such as Poland and Germany in particular. Now, why is this possible? Because the European Union has a law called free movement. It's called the Schengen Treaty of Free Movement, and it means that people are able to move freely between each country and start a new life and get a new business and a new job or a new family in any country in the EU that they want. And so people in Germany see the opportunity to get a high-paid, high-skilled job in Bristol, and so they move there. And people in Poland see the opportunity to get a better life for themselves, a higher income job in tourism, for example, or as taxi drivers, or in construction, and so they've moved to Bristol. As a consequence, Bristol's demography, which means the type of people that live there, has changed in the last 50 years especially. Now, Bristol's demographic background is fundamentally different to how it was 120 years ago. More than a quarter of people in Bristol come from different countries, and you can see this on the very faces of the people who live there. The students who are at university represent a diverse ethnic background, meaning that they come from many different countries, but in particular, They come from European countries and from former British Empire countries, the Commonwealth. This has led to significant population growth in Bristol. Bristol is one of the fastest growing cities in the United Kingdom. In fact, it's the second fastest growing city in the United Kingdom after London. And half of that population growth is down to migration. Here, as you can see, it's growing at 4.5% per year. Not only that, but this demographic change has led to a younger, more educated population in Bristol than was found in the past. And that has important effects, as we will discover in future lessons. Time to assess learning. Suggest one way that migration from around the world might benefit Bristol. Well, you may say that people are coming to get jobs, and so they can increasingly fill the different jobs that are needed in Bristol, increasing economic growth, since more people are making money and spending money in the city. You may also have said that Bristol's university attracts lots of young, skilled people, leading to an increased number of people who can perform high-paid jobs, leading to more businesses being set up and more businesses being attracted from around the world and around the UK. Question 2. Give me one important reason why Bristol's port would have closed down. You should have said that Bristol's port would have closed down because of the end of the British Empire. Britain no longer controls those countries around the world, and so it doesn't trade with them as much, especially in things like slaves, and slavery was abolished in the early 19th century in the UK. You may also have said that Bristol's port closed down because of the reduced role of British manufacturing and the export of manufactured goods due to deindustrialisation. Question 3. What is meant by privatisation, and how has that affected manufacturing in the UK? You should have said that privatisation is when governments sell companies that they used to control. When a government controls a company, it can pay that company and its workers no matter how much money or how little money that company is making from selling its goods, so the company will never go out of business. However, privatisation means that the only way that a company survives is if it makes a profit. And since global competition had increased, especially from companies in the European Union, many British companies, especially manufacturing companies, went bankrupt and out of business because they couldn't compete with the cheaper, better products from the European Union. Question 3. What happened to many factories in Bristol, and what did they change into, and why? You should have said that the manufacturing sites, the factories, closed down, and many of them turned into other economic activities such as theatres or offices. And this happened because there was an increasing number of young, skilled people working in the tertiary and quaternary sectors. Time to embed learning. Please look at the questions, answer them using your understanding, and then mark your answers. Go for it. So why was Bristol important in the 1900s? Make sure that you have all these points and explain them clearly as I have. So ensure that you have phrases like which led to, and provided goods for, which created. That's the explanation part. 2. How did government investment contribute to economic change? Make sure that you explain both these points clearly, especially the second point. 3. One reason why the British Empire has led to demographic change. Make sure that you explain both points. Again, remember, demographic change is about the ethnic background and changing ethnic background of a population. 4. Outline the contribution of the UK's relationship with the EU to Bristol's population growth. Again, you need both points. Mark your answers, add any corrections in green pen, and add any parts that you missed in green pen. If you underperformed in these questions, watch the explanation again in a week's time and attempt the questions again from memory. From the lesson, write 2 questions. Answer them from memory, and then in a week's time test yourself on those questions to ensure that you've remembered what you've learned this lesson. Thank you so much for joining me this lesson. In the next lesson, we're going to be exploring migration further and its impact on Bristol. Join me then.